We're live on YouTube and we're recording. May have one in-person participant.
Russell, you have someone looking over your shoulder.
Dwayne.
Okay. One live participant.
Okay. So thank you everyone for joining our August 13th, 2020 Board of Trustees public session meeting. We can now stand for the pledge. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So we will begin with the employees of the month. In this particular month, we have two employees of the month. The first employee of the month is Robert Hand, or Bob Hand, from the building's maintenance department. He is a maintenance mechanic 4, and his date of hire was June 30th, 2008. And our second is also in the building maintenance department, specialty as electricians, Cyrus Tyson. Maintenance mechanic 3, and his date of hire was October 18th, 2019. And both Bob and Cyrus have actually done an amazing job recently, but also really throughout this past winter as well, whether it has been our Christmas trees or whether there have been down power lines and getting electricity back to our apartments. They've been outstanding. In particular, the universal power supply installation at our police headquarters recently went down, and they actually had to get it back up, and they did so flawlessly. And so there was in the words of Chief Cummings, there was potential for a lot of problems, and there was absolutely no issues, and they did a great job. In addition, Bob and Cyrus worked to install the electrical service at the Pirates concert property. Their expertise in electrical work is a huge savings for the village. We're happy to have them both on our team, and we commend them both. So congratulations to Bob and Cyrus. That's our electrical team, and we're very appreciative of their work. Russell, we are now opening this up to public comment. Do we have any public comment this evening, or is that part of our public hearing?
We do have someone who's wants to make public comment. It is Lane. And I'm going to try to bring him in right now. Okay, it says that it's Kat, but he's using Kat's computer. And yes, the start video. And here we go. Try to see if Kat's got sound.
Well, now let's get it together.
He can. Does he have a speaker or no? State your name, please, and your address.
My name is Lane Bretschneider, 57 Lewis Street. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, you look like you're on trial. Okay, thank you. So I know I arrived late because I couldn't figure out how to get you guys on Zoom or whatever it's called. I guess I'm computer illiterate or totally illiterate. That's possible. Either way, my question is, I saw the agenda for today, and there was an item that I was expecting to see on the agenda, which I don't see. So I would just like to know if that's going to be put on the agenda.
This isn't a question.
What item?
So you can state your statements and.
I understand.
Okay. All right.
Lane, is there anything else that you would like to add?
No, I just want to know if that item that we discussed is going to be on the agenda.
Right, there's no comment back from the board. Thank you. You can, if you want, you can continue to watch. Next one. All right. Okay, I have no one else for public comment.
Russell, Lane made a good point. Was Heart of the Hamptons supposed to be on the agenda tonight?
Heart of the Hamptons is not ready for the resolution for the agenda, and I think Brian can maybe explain where we are, what the status is with regards to that process.
Yeah, it was cryptic to me as to what Mr. Brett Schneider was asking for when he talks about one item. I was unaware what one item he was talking about. But if it is the Heart of the Hamptons request with regard to the ambulance barn, I have had some dialogue with the executive director, and obviously under the comptroller regulations, there is going to be, if that is indeed an occupant that the board wants to have in the ambulance barn, there is a fair value component for a lease amount that they have to do. And the executive director said he appreciated that, he understood that perspective. He's going to go back to his board to talk about what those parameters might look like. So until they have their further conversation, and then we can have that dialogue with regard to what that amount is, I think they've got to do a little bit of due diligence and some homework. There's also a renovation budget that they've got to undertake to do that. That also takes money, so they've got to work with their board to get that sorted out. And it's now the ball's in their court to come back to us.
Is there anything we can do to speed this process up?
All the due diligence at this point is on their side.
Okay. I guess we're treating this like a discussion. Is there any other comments on this from the board?
No.
Yeah, I'd like to see this, get dealt with as soon as possible. So, again, I'm glad, Brian, you've been working with the director of Heart of the Hamptons, and the sooner they come back, the more we can start to discuss this and move it forward.
And do we have a certain timeline? Do we have an expected ETA of when this might happen?
I don't know. I'm not really privy to the internal workings of Heart of the Hamptons and what their board meeting schedule is. But we're essentially ready to go whenever they are with a lease. We can get together very fast. We just have to get to a number, what that's going to be, that would pass muster with the comptroller's office.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you. And I was. It took me a while to read what Lane was mentioning, but I appreciate him giving us that friendly reminder. And it sounds like we are moving in the right direction. So we appreciate everybody's help on that. We do not have board presentations this evening. We do have two public hearings. The first public hearing, number one, is a local law, face mask or face covering required on public property. Brian, I'll let you take it from here, and I'm also happy to add any perspective as well.
Okay, thank you, Mayor, members of the Board of Trustees. So this is, as with everything in the pandemic and COVID, I attended a webinar with Great American Leaders the other day, and one of they said in their comments that everything is accelerated in this pandemic, everything. And this law is one of those examples. So this board very well remembers way back in April, which seems now like ancient history, that on April 15th, the governor issued Executive Order 202.17 with regard to his mask instruction. However, one of the points of 202.17 was that there was no penalties for the violation of not wearing masks. On May 28, 2020, the governor then issued Executive Order 202.34. That just shows how many executive orders were issued between 17 and 34, to then allow businesses to deny admittance to individuals who fail to comply with the governor's face mask mandate as set forth in 202.17. Both 202.34, which was the business admission denial, and 202.17, neither of them had any fines or penalties, but critically, neither of them prohibited local governments who were then charged with the enforcement from enacting any or imposing any fines or penalties on that. Again, June 15, 2020, there was a Executive Order 202.45, which allowed gatherings up to 50, as long as that region reached phase 4. And I say that as prelude to what then we were grappling with of complaints with as a summer community, that we had people, our own residents and people from outside with the influx of people from the city, but then also summer residents and visitors, day trippers who came out to us to enjoy our beautiful community. And then there were tensions and issues with regard to the wearing of masks. So this board, in an attempt to come to a creative solution, on July 21st, came up with a proposal to amend the village law to add face masks. The wearing of face masks is mandatory, and the absence of that punishable by civil and criminal tickets, which would be a criminal ticket, which would be able to be issued by our police department. The mask regulations mirror to the word the governor's regulations, that if you're over 2, you have to do it unless you're medically unable to, and you're unable to maintain social distancing, you have to wear the mask. In the meantime, without any fanfare, without really any announcements, on July 9th, the Commissioner of Health, pursuant to his authority under the public health law, issued a amendment to what's called Part 66, Immunizations and Communicable Diseases, and titled COVID-19 Emergency Regulations, and he added a face mask requirement, and which is the first time that there actually was an enforceable statute, and added civil and criminal penalties and a maximum fine of $1,000, which is the same, which mirrored what our legislation is. So the proposal tonight on the law was whether we should codify, and if we need to, codify the face mask and face covering regulations in Southampton Village Code, or is the public health law as written adequate, and we can leave it with that. There is no preemption requirement or prohibition in the public health law to a local government enacting a parallel law in their own local code.
So Brian, can I ask you a question?
Absolutely.
So ultimately, this legislation that's proposed by the village is word for word with what the governor's executive orders and the health department, everything going. So as of right now, or as of what was it, July 9th, did you say?
Yes.
Enforcement can be, started, or at any particular point, someone can be fined if they're not compliant, correct? So
Right.
adding a law to our books isn't a necessary step because it already exists from the mandate or the executive order, correct?
Correct. And I think, as I prefaced in the beginning, everything has been going at warp speed. And it seems like ancient history now. In March, we first went into this and it got shut down. In April, since April, we've been living with face masks. And since then, all local government who has been grappling with, and is the government that's closest to the people, has been grappling with how do we actually do this enforcement. And all of us recognize that it's important. All of us recognize that enforcement is necessary. All of us recognize that we need to do this. The question is, do we put this into our village code or do we leave it with the public health law? And when we initially proposed this, the public health law was less than 6 or less than a week old. So we were equally on this curve, this momentum as this happened. And now we're only a month out of it. I'm unaware of any violations that have been issued under the public health law, but that was one of the concerns. And I think that everybody was moving forward at the same time, which resulted in a public health law enactment or subpart enactment, and then our proposal for Southampton Village.
Thank you, Councilor. May I speak, Mayor?
Ace.
Given a lot of thought about this, and Councilor, and very clinical analysis of that. Councilor, thank you. I'm going to start by saying, my perspective on this is consistent with what I've said during this whole crisis situation and in line with my 12 years of governing. And I understand where a proposed law, a local law, where this comes from, what the intention is, what the desire is, and what the goodwill is behind it. That's not lost, I don't think, to anyone, certainly not me. However, going back to my 12 years of service thus far, I've been pretty consistent, and I'm not a fan of mandating my citizens much beyond and above and beyond than what existing laws are already on the books. What becomes duplicitous or onerous to us as legislators, and what becomes punitive to our citizens and our residents. And then lastly, of course, the enforceability of it. And I think everybody's on this board has heard me say that a gazillion times. Laws, codes, whatever you want to call them, are only as good as, they're on paper. They're only as good as the enforceability of it. I have particular issues, and I think I've stated them, about the use of masks and the mandatory wearing of masks and social distancing. I think there are guidelines that are set federally and statewide through executive orders and the like that are sufficient, that are followed. I read letters, I talk to people, I think I hear people implying that there's a lack of compliance with mask wearing. I submit to anyone, turn on the Hamptons cam for just a few moments any given day over one Hildreth's, and you will see the majority of the people wearing masks, unequivocally. You flip that same video to Cooper's Beach, and you will see, again, the majority of people wearing masks, approaching and leaving at all times. So I think people already have the message. They've had the message for quite some time. So I don't, again, me personally, I know there's a national discussion about this, and I get that. But I have to look at what's involved in the 6.8 square miles, which I am entrusted with the rest of this board in governing. And the 6.8 square miles that we reside in have had an extremely low incidence level. It's been an approved level. We have none now hospitalized. And there's been good compliance. Now, that doesn't mean because of our influx, as the counselor has said, our influx of visitors and day trippers and tourists and out-of-towners or locals, whatever, local residents, that view it differently and have different opinions. I understand that. So much to the point where, I've had a resident recently stop in the middle of the road and take a photo and harass an officer of mine, which, quite honestly, that person was actually violating traffic code by doing so, ironically enough. I don't stand for that type of behavior. And the person was, again, in my opinion, harassing an officer on a hot summer day on pavement surrounded by cars emitting exhaust fumes, while that person could exit and re-enter the comfort of their air-conditioned vehicle. So that's a me problem. Those are my issues. However, it's about enforceability. And I don't see the merits. We have an executive order. And it's executive order for a reason. It's not a law, because even as our governor knows, he is an attorney. He was attorney general. He knows it's not enforceable. It's tough to enforce, and it violates many civil liberties and constitutional rights. That's why our own county executive, when he was implored by many of, when we had our county calls, we had many other elected officials, as I called, there was 140 of us. Some, which quite honestly, I was ever surprised they ever got elected with their lack of knowledge to the law, that we've all sworn to uphold the Constitution of New York and the Constitution of the United States. So when anybody ever says it's above the pay grade, I've heard that at one point from one elected person, is ignorant. So that said, the governor did exactly what he needed to do, put it on local establishments to do enforcement with the local police department. I think you all know how my opinion is of my local police department, our local police department, and how we operate and how we enforce. I'll be damned if I'm going to give them the hard responsibility to enforce this on top of every other single local state statute that they have to enforce. So, sorry, Mayor, I digress a little bit. But I guess in a way I'm saying, I'm not for bringing this to a local level, making a local law. I fully understand what's behind it, the thought behind it. But me as one person, I just, a little diatribe is what I would be for.
Deputy Mayor, thank you very much for your input. Are there any other comments from the board?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a couple if you don't mind.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, so understanding now, I believe when we met with the representatives from the state, in particular, I believe it was the #2 gentleman from the health department that came down for our meeting a couple weeks ago, and some of the local liaisons to the governor, they were the ones that I learned that there was a public health law that was just done. And that was the mechanism that allowed us to be able to enforce it through the executive order. So the mechanism is there, and in my opinion, that is ready to go upon enforcement if necessary. Creating this other law, I just see it as a piggyback. I don't understand the full realm of it based on the fact that we did find out that it is available to be enforced. Secondly, compliance by the public is a big thing, and getting the word out. I know we have banners around the village, we have signs, and it is very well noticed that we expect everybody to wear. Within 6 feet, you're supposed to. There's still the gray area outside of 6 feet, but it's always said if you cannot social distance. I can say that the gentleman from the health department from Albany was here about an hour and a half prior to our meeting, and he did say he walked around and he was very impressed about the amount of people that were wearing. And if they weren't wearing, it was on their chin, and when they came near someone, they lifted it up and put it. He felt that the village was in great shape at that particular day, and actually everybody that came to visit was very positive about the way we were running our village. So that was very good news. And lastly, I think with compliance by the public, and more importantly, let's get the village police to communicate more with people when they are on the streets. I think that is a good recipe. And if someone does decide that they want to be a little bit robust and don't want to wear, then the PD does have that right with the public health violation.
Thank you,
Trustee Parrish, I'm sorry, Mayor. Thank you for mentioning that. What the representative from the state said, correct. And if I may just say, the one enforceable law, as you referenced to, that wasn't created. That was always a public health. There was discussions that actually came on one of our group legislators' calls during the heart of the pandemic, and that was discussed with all the chiefs of all the departments. And the discussion was, if we should enforce something, okay, there is no literal law on the books that made, can enforce wearing of a mask, but that was already on the books. They already had that, there was a discussion. If we're going to enforce something, then it would be that, that health department law. The problem with that is that it was also it's pretty thin, again, you can write something, you can enforce it, you can cite, arrest, what have you. At the end of the day, the final judge, if you will, the final story, at the end of that story is in a court of law. And again, there are many people, professionals in the legal system, the legal end of this, are very hard pressed to think that any of those violations, fines, however, ultimately would stand up in a court of law. And that's when you have to, goes back to the enforcement issue. A good part, one part of law enforcement officers, is they act in good faith. Now, despite what the public may think about that currently, but they have to act in good faith. And what that means is that if you're going to enforce a law, a code, or something, if you're going to, exercise your powers to do something to a citizen and tell them you're doing something illegal, the good faith is that it has to go through the complete process, and it has to be, at the end of the day, something that could actually hold up in a court of law. That's where it gets back to where there's been a lot of issues with law enforcement, our own and around the state, the nation, however, wherever you go. Enforceability is one part of it. It's whether it actually can stand up in a court of law, and that's been a hugest argument. And County Executive Malone brought that up at one point. That's why he was begged by some local leaders, Long Island leaders, to pass what we're talking about today. And he and that's why I give him credit, because he is an attorney. He very astutely walked around that, knowing there was no way he can enact, in good faith, a county-wide mask wearing law, which is why they keep pushing it down to, and I mean it in a bad way, to the local levels, which is now it's on our plate. I understand it, but again, I'm sorry to drag on. That's why I don't think that's appropriate. I'm done.
Thank you, Rich. Are there any other comments from the board?
May I make a few comments, Mayor?
Thank you.
Can you hear me?
You can.
Oh, good. Thank you. Councilor Egan and Administrator Cradaville, how long has this legislation been on our website for our public to view? I know the press covered it, but how long has it been on our website?
We properly noticed it and let the public know that copies were available via email, or they could come and pick up a copy of the legislation in our office.
And it was noticed in the press, correct?
Yes, it's properly noticed in the press.
I received feedback from about a handful of residents. Has anyone else received feedback from on this board on this legislation?
I have.
Okay.
On both sides of it, quite honestly, yes.
So the question I have is, I don't know if anybody read section A and B, 82-14, public property. All persons shall wear a face mask or face covering in the village of Southampton when present in or on any public property or public place, park, recreational facility, village buildings, etc. But section B indicates private property. All persons shall wear a face mask or face covering when on private property located in the village of Southampton, including but not limited to residential property, business, professional offices, etc. So I don't know the law, even though I was accepted to law school a while back, but how does our police enter someone's private property?
Very good question. Very good question. And it's and I don't know. I have a couple ways I would answer that. But the crux of that, what you just said, Trustee Allen, is in complete violation of people's constitutional rights and privacy. And the fact it's even being discussed in that manner is appalling. One, in the public space, you're telling me, because it's been discussed by CDC and other NIH guidelines, that walking down the street by myself is safe. I know it's safe, but a law passed that says me walking by myself with a mask, if now I'm breaking the law. I'm sorry, are you freaking kidding me? I'll be the first to violate. I'll be the first to challenge it, quite honestly. And if you're telling me my private residence, my private premise, and an officer is going to enter my because there's, that's hard to prove. It's extremely challengeable. And counselor, maybe I'm not going to, whatever. I'm not going to, speak for you, but I'd be the first to challenge it, quite honestly.
So the distinction is between public property and private property is very simple. Public property is such as the sidewalk, village hall, parks. Private property is restaurants, businesses, establishments open to the public where they may be. Really is not intended for people's living rooms, but it's for private property, the distinction in the common law between public property, parks, and private property, meaning restaurants, those kind of places.
And forgive me, Counselor, with okay, you're right. So I took it as far as private residence, and you're right that that'd be hard pressed, and I do hope it's not going to that level. But you're right, private premises, which again are private establishments like restaurants. First off, when the executive order came out, that always existed. You know, as a private premise, you always had the right to deny service to anyone based on whatever parameters you've established. So it was a nice optic. You know, for the governor to go out and say, we're going to pass executive order that, you know, restaurants can deny whatever. That already exists. It was always the law. So that was optics. So I do have an issue with now I'm walking down the street or sitting in a park now surrounded in social distance and I'm not wearing a mask, or someone in my family is not wearing a mask, and I got one of my officers coming over and telling me I'm breaking the law. Again, I'm telling you, I'll be the first to challenge it. I'll be the first.
I would just like to add to that comment, though, the way it reads, Counselor, it does say residential property. To me, that's very unclear.
Yeah, it does have that language of residential property, and it says including but not limited to residential property, business and professional offices. I think the point, obviously we want law to be as clear as possible. I think striking the word residential property is good, but again, it potentially opens up what might be games to be played with what's property. But I think that it's a good clarification to strike the two words residential property.
Okay, good work, everyone. So, Brian, sometimes it's good to get the input from someone who may have attended law school, but anyway, versus attending. But
I'll take all the help I can get.
That being said, I think
go to law school. Brian.
I was actually told not to go to law school, but maybe that was a mistake. But on back to the legislation here, I think what our board really should think about is not so much whether we like the governor's executive order, but can this help us enforce the law? I mean, that's really the question here. Would this strengthen enforceability? Would it make citations look different if it was a citation versus public health law, Part 66, or versus local code? That question I would refer to Brian. Would this help us? Would we gain something by it? I think that is really what the focus here is, and not so much whether we agree with wearing a mask or not.
That's an excellent point. I think everybody's making excellent points tonight. We're grappling with something that none of us have ever grappled with before, and none of us ever would have thought we were going to grapple with. Village boards are very good at regulating parking, high grass, garbage days, and making sure the streets get swept. Zoning. We're responding to a pandemic, and it's difficult for us to try to manage our way through this. From an enforcement standpoint, again, the public health law, it's not even, by the way, a public health, it's an administrative regulation passed by the Commissioner of Health. This is not, to Trustee Richard's points, Jastrzemski, this is not passed by the Assembly and the Senate and passed by the governor as a regular law. This is passed as an administrative code by the Commissioner of Health pursuant to his emergency powers. And it really has not been battle tested yet. It really, it talks about whether, as part of the commissioner's regulations, whenever you make any changes to an administrative law, you have to put in a provision that says whether it generates paperwork and whether it's duplicative and all there are alternatives. And one of the items which caught my eye was it says local government mandates. This regulation imposes no additional local mandates beyond what has already been required pursuant to executive order. And I think, to Trustee Jastrzemski's point, I don't think that that's necessarily accurate, because there was no penalty provision on the executive order. The executive order was very clear as to the requirement to wear it, but there was no mechanism for the enforcement, and our police and law enforcement are always approached with, do something about that person not wearing a mask. or violating social distancing. And so the village in July sought to notice this to allow an actual a village code violation on face masks. The public health commissioner, virtually in the scheme of legislative calendar, appointed it in the exact same thing in mid-July, came to the same conclusion we did, and adopted this public health amendment, gave an emergency justification for it, and provided that 66-3.5 that there would be now civil and criminal penalties. So this is as equally brand new as our law would be. And I guess to the mayor's point, is this just make it easier for us to be able to issue tickets under our village code, which our village officers are very good at, trained at, and experienced in, versus a public health administrative law that is equally as new as this.
Cal?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I just commenting on that. One of the things that I have seen around the village is that, sure, there might be some people that don't wear masks, but whenever they are asked to wear a mask or asked to comply with it, they readily seem to be able to do that. Whether they pull it out of their pocket or pull it up from their nose or do whatever, I think people are in compliance when asked. So I think that would probably be the first step, no matter who or what we are asking our officers to do. Our first step would be ask someone to put a mask on. And with that, would it make sense for us to do a wait and see and allow our officers under the powers that they currently have to find out how many violations we might just be writing for this, how many times they have to ask people to put their masks on, and if there is no compliance and they write up a person, and then wait and see if it makes sense to put something on our local books when there already seems to be something there that they can that is enforceable for them. And so I'm wondering if, I think it's great that Southampton is ahead of the curve. I think it's great that we wanted to, put it out there. But we now have the ability, our officers now have the ability to write tickets under something that the state has mandated. And should we try and see what happens from that standpoint before we say, okay, this is not working, so maybe it should be in local law, or, this is really working and it should be in our code. I just would like to, personally, I would like to wait and see how prevalent it is, because like Trustee Ostromsky said, the majority of the people that I have seen, they are wearing masks around the village. Some of the people walking out of the Fudge Company or Carvel have theirs off to try and eat their ice cream, and I can understand that. But for the most part, I do think that there is good compliance, and I'd like to just take a wait and see on it, personally.
Thank you for that, Trustee Polaro. And Brian, one other question, and I have some thoughts as well. What would be the negative? Wait and see approach, could also make sense, and it's a great point. But what would be the negative about getting this onto our books now versus later? Yes, there is administrative law, as you pointed out, but let's say this is on our books. Would there be a negative?
I don't really see a negative for us if we did hold off and did not enact it tonight. I think again what this was a reaction to, and Trustee Polaro said it best. We were ahead of the curve. We essentially were hearing March, April, May, June, July, 5 months of do something about this masks. And we not only were frustrated as local government officials, we were frustrated as law enforcement. We've had a lot of conversations about the burden on local law enforcement trying to do this and them under assault feeling that they're not enforcing it when in fact we know as a fact that the executive orders did not have that enforcement mechanism. So we sought to fill that that gap. And at this virtually at the same time, the commissioner came out with his regulation. So I don't necessarily think that there is a downside to us. I just think that there may be an ease in writing it, but I don't think that there is a downside if we did take a 4 week, 1 month, say 6 week wait and see to adopt the village code amendment. And again, none of us thought we'd be here, and this is moving fast. It almost feels like ancient history that in April already the mask regulations went in. We're still trying to figure our way through it. I will almost guarantee in a month we'll be somewhere else. Hopefully better.
If I may, Counselor, with all due respect, I do see negatives to it, not as a legislative way, as you point out. The negatives are, again, the burden to our law enforcement community, and I think that is a burden. It's a burden they've already had to undertake on needlessly, as a matter of fact. So I think that's an increased burden that they will be demanded by the public. I also think, as I made a reference to before, there are citizens who feel they are empowered already and have the duty to pretty much take the law into their own hands and notify people when they believe they are in violation of something. I believe passing this law on a local level will actually empower those people more. So that if they see something that they perceive to be a law that's on the books and not being followed, and God forbid, not being enforced by the officer at any given time or what have you, whatever the perception may be, that empowers that person, and they're already empowered. And there are too many people, that feel they are deputized already to act upon and point out something that is, they perceive as incorrect. So I think it is a negative thing. And again, thirdly, as I said earlier, again, this is aside from my personal beliefs about it. Again, it's about the enforceability and the mere fact that in our little 6.8 square mile neck of the woods, Trustee Palaio just said as well, our case, we've been ahead of the curve since day one. If our numbers were drastic, I don't see the need for it. That is in addition to already existing state or statutes that we can work upon. Again, I said from the outset of my first comment when I spoke, I understand the direction behind it. I understand the drive behind it. I understand the goodwill behind it. I just don't, as a pragmatic sense from an enforcement and a need, I don't see that. And again, within the village of Southampton.
Councillor Egan, the issue apparently is public spaces and private businesses, restaurants and stores, as you so aptly clarified earlier. And to Rich's point, we do have a number of people who advocate for the wearing of masks. We do not want people to think that they should not wear a mask. What is our process today within our police department if, hypothetically, Rich were to sit down on a bench and wear a mask and 4 people were to surround him without a mask and sing happy birthday? I know it's not your birthday, Rich, but hypothetically, what happens under the current, you referred to it as administrative regulation under the Department of Health. What does our police department do? What do they have in hand? What ticket do they write? What exactly happens?
So before mid-July, as Trustee Jastrzemski said, no ticket. There was no ticket to be issued. And I think that was part of the frustration that while all law enforcement tried to say, okay, we understand that there are these obligations that are being imposed upon citizens under the executive order, but there's no way to compel that compliance. And virtually at the same time, again, the village of Southampton moved forward with this proposed local law, putting it on a proposal in July. Virtually at the same time, the Commissioner of Health came out with his regulation and said the same thing. And so now the ticket would be, if it was enacted today without the village code, it would be the local police, our police, and any other local department in the state would be authorized to issue a violation under this public health regulation, subpart 66 and 66-3. So that would be a ticket that would, in accordance with the commissioner's provisions, allow civil or criminal penalties are provided by law. Individuals who violate this subpart are subject to a maximum fine of $1,000 for each violation. And perhaps prescient of it, we set forth the same punishment in village code. So when this law was originally proposed, there was no violation. Now, as again, things are moving very fast, the state enacted their public health law, and that would be the ticket that our police would issue. I think in conversation with Chief Cummings, his process is, as most local government enforcement is encouragement to try to get compliance and not to be adversarial. We are policing our neighbors. We are policing our friends. You know, we are a small town. So it really is to try to encourage, point out the error, encourage compliance, and if there is some aggressive resistance, there would be now under the commissioner's regulations a consequence. And what we were looking to do was to give our police force that same power under the village code.
Thank you, Brian. Trustee, that was a great question. I was actually wondering that myself, so I think that definitely helps a lot. You know, my perspective here, I mean, it's pretty well known from the start. You know, just last month you had Robert Redford, you know, CDC director, you know, state that you know, we all know this, but you know, cloth. He said we are not defenseless against COVID-19. Cloth face coverings are one of the most powerful weapons we have to slow and stop the spread of the virus, particularly when used universally within a community setting. All Americans have the responsibility to protect themselves, their families, and their communities. And that could not be more well said. And so, as we've stated here at this public hearing, the majority of us in Southampton are doing this, and the majority of us are doing a great job. But there are definitely quite a few people we're not. You know, of course, I'm probably one of the first lines of defense, you know, from the community as far as hearing input. And every day we have residents calling and stating that they're uncomfortable because some people are not wearing a mask. Most people are. And for me, one of the most scary things is going back to where we came from. We're far away from that now, but it's just today. We have no idea what will happen. As we learned from the Spanish flu, there was a second and third wave. And during weekends, for example, we have a lot of day trippers coming to Southampton Village. That's one of the key criteria for actually spreading, with people traveling to and from. And so all it takes is one super spreader to really spread COVID-19 throughout. We know where we're at right now. Our community, our trustees, our board, our law enforcement have done a great job to date. But our law enforcement, I believe, unless I'm mistaken, in my opinion, is asking for a stronger and more seamless enforcement mechanism. And I personally believe from what I'm hearing, it may be easier to use our local code than to use a administrative regulation issued by the Commissioner of Health. We might not want to try that. We might actually just want to have the ease of use here. And so, you know, when I asked, is there anything negative that would happen if we added this to our code? I mean, the worst case scenario is that this is simply redundant. But the best case scenario is that it gives our law enforcement a more seamless and more efficient mechanism to enforce the law, to ensure the public health and safety of our community. And I think that's what this comes down to today, making it as easy as possible for our law enforcement to enforce this law. Of course, you know, we should all issue a directive that it should be done. There should be a request to be done nicely to get people into compliance. That is, of course, common sense. But if there are, of course, people who don't want to get into compliance, you know, this is the kind of the final way we would use this. So that's my opinion, and I appreciate everyone's opinions here today. And ultimately, I know we don't all have the same opinions, and there's various things. But I just wanted to thank everybody for the discussion. And of course, if there's any additional comments, we're all ears.
Is the chief on with us today?
Fortunately, no, the chief is not with us this evening. So I've had conversations with him, certainly. But
No, I would just like to hear his perspective
yeah,
about a public
no.
law versus a village code. Is there any more merit to a village code rather than a statewide public health law? I would say that a lot of times people could chuckle at a local law versus something that is handed down from the state through the health commissioner. So I'd be curious to hear.
Well, the difference at the end of the day, when you have a state statute, code of law, and you have a local similar law, the difference when you enforce it is fine levied. Let's say, for instance, if it's a state law or violation, then the fine violation, the fine from it would go to the state predominantly. If you have a local law or code on your books, that keeps it home rule, keeps it local as far as when you do actually should the actual fine be upheld in a court of law. That's usually the difference between local and state laws. I know when it comes to traffic laws or codes, and forgive me if I'm correct on that, Counselor. I think I am. Correct me if I'm wrong. But otherwise, my opinions I've been stating are my own. I don't really know, quite honestly, Chief Cummings' thoughts on this. Other than I do think there was an agreement about the burden on the police department to then have to enforce this, as opposed to which has been, a recommended thing and a strongly suggested compliant method. Being a community, as the counselor said, we're all friends, neighbors. It's tough to put the hammer down on. You try not to, and you don't want to do that to your visitors if you can avoid it. So I think he would agree on the certain burden part, and again the perceived burden part, where again I think the public who already are empowered to point out what they think are violations, which most of the time they are completely wrong. As a matter of fact, they don't know the law and they don't know rights. However, perception is everything. So putting this, and if this becomes knowledge that there is this local law and we have local officers, for whatever reason, not able to, whatever, or if it's perceived by some people that they're not enforcing, I fear that empowers a particular group of people to be even more vigilant and adversarial to our law enforcement community. I do believe the chief would agree with me in that statement.
And just one more, maybe Brian, you can answer. At the end, if someone does get written a ticket issued to go to court for not wearing a mask, the ultimate fine is determined by the judge, correct?
Correct.
They could dismiss it if someone said, "Hey, look, you know what? I was absent-minded. I was trying to explain it to the officer," but so that could be dismissed and.
Absolutely. Yep. Just like in all tickets. Absolutely.
Could Trustee Ostremski or Mayor Warren, as police and deputy police commissioner, do you feel that, I mean, if there were a greater presence, and again, if the chief were on, I'd be asking him directly, if there were a greater presence of for lack of a better term, a foot patrol up and down Main Street or Job's Lane, our TCOs do a good job, but if there was a greater police presence up and down those two lanes and Hampton Road maybe, and reminding or doing all of that, do you think that would alleviate work, any of it, or again, I'm not trying to put the burden on our police officers of having to write, but just the mere presence of them there, could that spark a greater compliance from the people walking around?
Yes. Actually, Trustee Polaro, it's a good point. It's a good question, and I can answer that in a way that I'll answer that. We this past weekend, we had a visit from the president of the United States, and there was discussion to have our Southampton in the streets this past weekend, and the discussion with the chief was that he wanted to do if we were to have, and when we do have Southampton in the streets, okay, and we're going to have it again. He wanted to have a more dedicated presence, more police presence, and that came from the meeting, as Trustee Parrish referenced earlier, when the state officials came down and Department of Health executive. We had some there was some pretty heavy hitters. I was impressed from what I understand that because I wasn't at the meeting, but the breadth, the lineup of the people that attended that was very impressive. That came out to look at our and listen to and offer feedback to us, and the director that Trustee Parrish was referencing earlier did have a conversation with Chief Cummings and said pretty much, he recommended if you're going to do that, I would put extra, and he recommended, a discussion was about how many extra foot patrol and perhaps a sergeant and so forth. So to answer your question, that actually is what the chief would do with his department, because that's what was discussion with the officials that came down. It was a very good discussion. It was a good dialogue. And that's also leads to why that wasn't possible to have Southampton in the streets this past weekend, because of the President of the United States visiting us. All hands were on deck to provide security for our community and assisting our state police and feds and so forth. So there wasn't the manpower to devote to properly anyways, to Southampton in the streets. So I use that as a reference to answer your question. So the answer is yes. I think the presence is actually what was prescribed by outside observers, and the Chief Cummings was willing to actually enact that as part of his procedure going forward.
Okay, great. I think that makes great sense. And again, in my mind, it goes to the wait and see to try and figure out. And again, I'm not opposed if it's needed. I'm not opposed to continuing the discussion, and waiting and seeing if it is needed or not. But I think with what we have in place, I don't know the best way that we come out of this, if it's just a no action on it and see or push it out to our next meeting, or I guess, Counselor, as you said, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, however long. But I again think it would be good to see how it's enforceable, how it works, and where we are with the health violation, rather than than a local law tonight, at least from my standpoint.
Trustee Polaro, the only thing I would add is sometimes, Brian, I like to kind of debate and discuss the role of the commissioner per se, and oftentimes the role of a commissioner from an elected official is more in name only. It's more of a liaison versus actually someone with the authority. But I can tell you, as someone with the authority vested in me to oversee law enforcement, I can tell you my opinion is that it's not a wait and see. I think this is something we need today, and I also, in my opinion, and from what I think I'm hearing from law enforcement, is that they actually need this as a mechanism to enforce, and it's actually one of the reasons why we're not enforcing, hence why we are having this public hearing. Now, it would be great if it is different, but this is my opinion, my understanding, and hence why I'm communicating this to the board.
Yeah, well, I'd love, as Trustee Parrish said, it would be great. I'd love to hear that from the chief to make sure, and get his take on it as well, because I think that's important that we hear it, because I do believe, I do agree with Trustee Ostremski that, there may be a time that we have local laws on our books right now that, as I eat outside at dinner, I see being flaunted left, right, and center. And the reason for that is that, there's not a police presence right there at that time. And I don't fault those kids for wanting to ride their bikes down the street pulling wheelies. I really hope that at some stage no car is going to reverse out and hit them, because I can tell you who's going to be at fault and who's not going to be at fault. But I do believe that, that if the police really are saying they need this to operate, then I wish the chief were on this call tonight. Otherwise, I do believe it's very difficult for the police to be everywhere at every time, to try and adhere to the mask law. And then also, I do believe you might get some people out there, like we have already seen, who are going to take the law into their own hands. And I don't think that's the right way to do it either. You can ask, and again, the police are trained in these situations. They go through training in how to deal with people who are unruly. A citizen is not. And so I think a confrontation would escalate much quicker between two citizens rather than a police officer and a citizen.
Okay. What I think we should do, that's all great points, Andrew. What I think we should do to move the meeting along is I think, we can make a motion to close. I think we all agree it might be a good time to close. And then I can make a motion to approve. But if it turns out that no one else on the board wants to approve this, then we don't even have to get a second. And then it will remain closed, and we can maybe push this out to the next hearing. And Brian, does that sound like a good plan?
That's certainly one approach.
Just point of clarification, if we close the meeting and a resolution doesn't get a second, does it come on? Is it better to close with no action and go towards the next meeting, or I just am not sure which.
So
Council, what exactly are we prescribing? What are we doing here?
Yeah. So what I think is being proposed. Look, there's either a motion to approve, there's a motion to deny, or there's a motion to, which both you have to close the public hearing, but a motion to close the public hearing, and then you can reserve decision. And if you reserve decision because you want to have additional input or what have you, and then bring it back up for a vote at a later time, you can do that. You've had the public hearing component. Obviously, Russell, we have to check to see if there are any attendees who have their hand up and want to speak. But otherwise, you can close the public hearing, motion to close the public hearing, and then you have a motion to reserve decision. It can be re-added to the board's agenda at a later time. And if there is
what about the option of keeping it open so we can have public input until the next meeting?
You can do that too. If you want to close, adjourn the public hearing to a date certain, you can do that too. But you got to adjourn it to a date certain.
Correct.
Mr. Mayor, I just want to point out that I think we have insufficient information to some degree. Chief Cummings is not here. Two, I think Councilor Egan had indicated that he's unaware of any violations being issued. I'd like to understand why that is. Is it because we're not enforcing it, or it's complicated to enforce? I mean, I had visited a friend in the business district today, and her daughter and two friends came from the beach, and two of them wore a mask and the third forgot. And her mother said, "Put your mask on," and she immediately did. It was just, she was a teenager and she forgot. So had the police been standing there, what would they have done? Do you know what I mean? Did they take a picture of her? Did they say, "You're standing within 3 feet of somebody else, you don't have a mask"? They do. I think we need to tease out a little bit more about how this actually works. I'd like to know where it has been enforced and what was seen, and what violation was meted out, and whether it actually worked under this public health law or not. I do agree. I would like to see mask wearing. It is our only protection. But I don't know the code as it's written, and I don't know the enforcement as it's supposed to be, how that's really going to work.
I think
Trustee Allen,
everybody was
Brian,
I'm sorry, Mayor.
I just wanted to say one quick thing. I apologize for jumping in. Trustee Allen, the way it should be handled, in my opinion, is that we got all those thousands of masks that the governor sent down from Albany. So the officer would then go up to the teenager and say, excuse me, would you like to have a mask? I've got them on my person here. Here you go. And then that student would then say thank you, and then they put the mask on, and then there would be no issue. That's how ideally the situation should be handled. But if the person then said no, I refuse to wear one, that would be a different story. But ultimately, the ideal situation is quite simple. The officers, here, would you like a mask for free? And the person would hopefully say yes, thank you.
And that's a solution, but that's not how the code is written. And it's a good idea, but that's not how the code is
And a
written.
person actually has a constitutional right to deny having you put it on. Just a little aside there. That's a whole nother argument.
So, Mayor, that is a great example. It's what I mentioned earlier. Compliance by the public with the police being communicative and also having them, because we know we have them down. So, again, if the individual decided to deny it right then and there, he could write them up for a public health violation. So the mechanism is already there. But the compliance, like you said, and the ability of an officer to hand someone a mask is key. And I have seen that personally with myself, where people have been outside and walked by and, motioned to me in my business, can I have a mask? And I've gone out and given to them. And they haven't even come on in to my business. But just knowing that there is some place where they can get one is always a good thing. And to have people on the street, especially our officers, having them is excellent.
So again, thank you. Again, all good points. Again, I would argue that what we're talking about here is that enforcement mechanism gray area, or is it easily enforceable? And again, worst case scenario, this is redundant. Best case scenario, it actually enhances our enforcement. And so that is essentially why I'm asking the board to approve this. And to help also our law enforcement community. But I understand that we all have different opinions, and that's of course okay. And we can work together to figure out the best thing to do. And obviously we have our votes, and we could use them, and then make our votes and just move on to the next part of the agenda tonight.
So the only thing I want to add is that we do have a lot of people who do like to watch live. There are some people screaming. You could have the option of adjourning and just leaving it open for written comment, or adjourning to the next meeting if you feel as though that is something you wanted to do. Obviously, Counselor gave the options of closing and other things, but I just I just wanted to make that mention.
So let's close and just adjourn to another date with people that do want to, have their say at this. That makes the most sense based on the fact that, we do want to hear from the chief. We do want to understand how their process would be with both cases, and as well as what the public would, the ones that do decide to, comment what their feelings are.
And if I could just add something too, and I think that, I think that this debate is great. I think it's necessary, and I can almost guarantee, without having checked the minutes from 1918 around the Spanish flu, this has not been a topic of discussion by the mayor and board of trustees since 1894 in the village of Southampton. So I think we're trying, in this small amount of time, in this meeting, trying to grapple with, national and big issues, and they're important issues. And I think we're doing our best to try to do this at warp speed. The Commissioner of Health was only literally a half a step ahead of us when we passed this. So I think, to everyone's point, if there are additional comments, the question is, do we want to close the public hearing and leave it open for written comments for 2 weeks and adjourn it to a date certain? And then in that meantime, solicit additional written comments if necessary from the public, and also solicit a professional opinion from the chief as to how he's doing it and how enforcement's going, whether the public health law, public health administrative regulation is effective to him, or would it make his job easier if it was in the village code? So if that's my sense, I think that maybe is the motion that the board might want to entertain.
mean, for me, I mean, if the board wants to make that motion, that's fine. I mean, I'd like to make the motion to close and approve. Trustee Allen, is that something that you would want to do? Because if you don't want to do it, then clearly it doesn't, we don't even have the ability for a second there. So I'm just curious what you think.
So, as you know, I very much believe people should wear masks, but I think this is a little bit more complicated and nuanced than the code is written allows us to actually enforce, to Trustee Yastrzemski's point. And I just think we need to, I don't like how the language reads in certain areas, and I do think we have insufficient information. But I very much respect that we as a community protect each other by wearing a mask. And I'd like to see that get even better because I too am receiving those complaints. And so, I don't have statistics, but I received at least 4 or 5 this week. I don't know if that's 4 or 5 out of 4,000 or 4 or 5 out of 12,000. To Trustee Yastrzemski's point, you can look on the camera and see. But if a second wave comes back and we know masks are, the only method of protection, it's serious, and we have to take it seriously. Here's a very crazy anecdote, but Germany, that's really done a very good job of flattening the curve, said, I don't want anybody going out without wearing a mask, unless you're a single intact family unit. And 3 people went out, and they were from 3 different places, and they wanted to go hang out, and they were given a pretty hefty fine, and that sent a message. So my question is really, does the existing code as it's listed in the public health law, excuse me if I have all the acronyms incorrect, is that affected? And to your very point, Councillor Egan, I think we need to have our chief tell us what additional benefit will we get. But I also agree with the other trustees. We are a community and we can find ways to work together. But this has to work, because come fall, if it comes back and it's more lethal, we can't run out of time. So I understand the sense of urgency and need. I'm just not so sure what we have in front of us tonight will work.
Okay. All valid points. What I'd like to propose is a compromise, because of course I would love to close and adopt, but we don't have the votes right now. Could we can close, or we can make a motion to adjourn or to close and wait. But I would love for this board to pass a resolution tonight, essentially requesting that our TCOs, or traffic control officers, make a priority of taking those masks the governor gave us and passing them out nicely to people on the street. And just to show our department that this is a priority of ours. And I think if it came from the board instead of just from me, I think it would have a lot more strength.
I believe that's more of a civil service issue, and as far as a contractual issue and what the job description issue is, as well intended as a gesture is, but to demand and mandate that, the answer to that is where that would have to come from the chief and lieutenants that oversee that. If that's within the scope of what they can do and be asked or be mandated by our board to do, that's a different thing.
Counselor, does that make sense? Or,
well, I guess my question would be why. I mean, again, unless that can't be done for some reason, why couldn't they be doing that today? I mean, I would have thought that was already being done with the masks that we received from the governor's office the day after the visit, when they said they were going to send masks down. I mean, again, Mr. Mayor, you stated that the officer can have the mask and hand it to the person that's not wearing one. I would go so far as to think, if the officer asked, do you have a mask, put it on, that would happen. If they don't have a mask, then fine, let's give them one. And I don't know why it would take a resolution from this board or a local law to have an officer do that. Again, as I said, an officer interacting with the public is noted. It's part of their job description. They're trained in that. Again, when you get 2 citizens going after it, there is a sense of right and wrong from it, and I think it can escalate very quickly. So I mean, I would hope that our officers today are already doing that. I mean, I know firsthand that they are because I was there. Now, granted, this was probably back in May, maybe early June. I was down at the beach walking, and an officer came out to kind of check on what was going on, saw that a couple people weren't wearing masks, and handed them out in the plastic bag so that no one touched the mask. So again, part of me, I've already seen some of this. So
Again, Trustee Blair, you're right. It is you're seeing some of it. I remember actually giving one of our officers those plastic bags, but and I hate that it was plastic, but that's a different comment for a different day.
Beggars can't be choosers in a pandemic.
That's right.
It's yeah, I know. I hear you.
But I would like to see it be done a little more, and of course, memos and emails and phone calls, have been made, and sometimes they're listened to, and sometimes they're not. And I just again thought that I'm asking for the board's help, and if the board would be willing to pass this resolution, I think it would just add a little more emphasis to our importance. Call it symbolic, if you will, but I think it could be a little help here.
Symbolism is for the elected people. Enforcement is nothing about symbolism. It's either legal to enforce or it isn't.
I mean, again, I'd love to hear from the chief and
right, and I think that's more of a comment from the chief.
Yeah, I think that I'd love to hear from the chief and what he is or what he isn't doing, can't do, and then again, I think I would need just a little bit more information from that. But I mean, it would be my hope. Again, our police officers are protect and serve. And in this instance, handing out masks, as we know from the pandemic and what is occurring, that is one way to protect and serve. So if it is something that they can do, then great. I would like, again, I think that I'd like to hear from the chief and understand better the position on why or why that is not being done today.
Okay. At this point, I feel pretty good about everything that's been said. I'll let the board decide how they'd like to proceed.
It seems like, Mayor, everybody wants to adjourn this and leave it open for comments from what I get, especially with some information from the chief and also the public. That's what I'm getting from everybody, and it is dragging on now. So I'd like to get this.
Well, I can tell you certainly that the part of the mask legislation, again, I can whatever the board decides, but certainly getting some more feedback on that. I am without a doubt not for any resolution mandating the TCOs engage in other activity that I'm not sure they're supposed to in the first, may be mandated by the board.
Councillor Egan, excuse me.
I was just going to say, Trustee Allen, we can just make a motion to adjourn. Otherwise, it was said during the Constitutional Convention, the founding fathers would stay up all night and they would drink and eat and converse.
We can do that.
24 hours, and I want maybe one of these days, but for now, I'd love to get to local law number 2. So maybe we just make a motion to adjourn.
We could. Mr. Mayor, may I say one thing?
Sure.
So on a positive note, since everyone's talking about complaints, I did get a call today from a woman who witnessed one of our police officers handing out a mask to someone on the street who didn't have one. And symbolically, thank you very much. And I hope our police department continues to do that. So I'll just say that.
Okay. So drum roll. With that being said, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn to Russell. When is the next meeting?
The 25th, August 25th.
To August 25th, 2020. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you, everyone. The next local law, maybe Brian, you could introduce local law number 2, uniform penalties for offenses and violations of village code.
Yes.
Make a motion to open the hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor, members of the Board of Trustees. This really came at the initiative of Trustee Allen, so I'm happy to co-host this opening with her on this webcam. The concern was, especially during this summer, that some of our penalties that are spread out throughout the code are artificially low and potentially have not been looked at in a very long time. So before the board is a proposal to bring the general charging section up from $1,000 to $2,000. That is in keeping with other villages, not necessarily on the East End. We may be the first on the East End, but at least in Suffolk County, that make a general charging section of a penalty up to $2,000. Now our penalties are up to $1,000. That does not mean that the village prosecutor and the justice will have every violation that comes before it at $2,000. It just increases if there are repeat offenders or someone who's not getting the message that there is something higher than $1,000. In this case, we move it to $2,000. And the other provision of this proposed local law, except for VTL, vehicle and traffic law, mirror violations that are in our village code, where those fines are set by statute. Elsewhere in the village code, any of the penalties that say are set forth at $100 or $50 that don't get renewed or reviewed on a regular basis, they would be eliminated, and they would just have a general reference to the general charging section in the beginning of the code. And what that does is it streamlines and modernizes the Southampton Village Code, that when a change is happening, you don't have to think about what that violation will be. It's up to $2,000 as set forth in the general charging section, as opposed to contradictory or artificially low charging sections that are buried throughout the code.
So every violation can then be levied a fine of $2,000 at the discretion of the judge?
Correct. Of the prosecutor and the judge, correct. Ultimately, the judge's authority.
Well, judge, I'm sorry, about the prosecutor and judge.
All right. Sounds pretty straightforward. Unless anyone has any comments, I think we could make a motion to close and to adopt, but want to hear any comments, but this one sounds pretty straightforward.
No, I see Gary raising his hand.
This might be an isolated occurrence, but we've talked in the past about some of our tree situations where we've had a contractor come in and cut down a 100-year-old tree. And we've talked about what is the value of that tree. Is that a $20,000 tree, 10, 15, whatever it is. So in that instance, 2,000 wouldn't come close unless something in that penalty could say that it would be a replacement value of a lost asset.
You know what the cost of that, what the charge would be for that tree now?
Well, it would be irreplaceable for a tree that size, but I would think you'd be in the $20,000 realm.
You know what section that says 20,000 in our village code, Gary?
No.
Yeah, I don't think that happens. And
No, it's not there.
Right, it's not there.
Yes.
So this would increase it, that even if it fell under the general $1,000, it would go up under 2,000. And we're actually in the works. Maybe you have a crystal ball over at DPW that they can see it, but we're actually working on a land clearing and tree legislation that would address those kind of situations. But now again, it kind of illustrates the point that $1,000 is way too low. We really need to at least go to 2, which is in keeping with the other villages in Suffolk County.
Okay. Thank you.
Counselor, there will be no set terms for anything other than what is under the statute for traffic violations or whatnot, correct?
Correct. There are some isolated sections under the VTL that the statutory violation is actually set by the state. But in any other instance, it will be, as we've seen other signs, that it will now say up to, for a fine up to $2,000.
$2,000.
And hopefully that will serve as a deterrent.
So, Brian, you think we're ready to make a motion to close and adopt?
Check if there's any public comment. If there's no public comment.
I see no hands raised, and I did not get any written comment.
And Councillor Egan, thank you for giving that outline. These fines have not kept with the times. This modernizes them. The only question I think that I received from one constituent is, would there be situations where we over penalize, meaning somebody has put out a sign that's 5 times what it should be, and to Trustee Yastrzemski's point or Trustee Polara's point, someone could mete out a $2,000 fine versus in some of our cases, we have a first offense is at X hundred and the second offense is at Y hundred. That's my only question, making it uniform, that there are some situations that, meaning it's very reliant, I guess, on where does the judge find what is consistent with the violation.
Yeah, I think that's a good concern of someone who's not generally had contact, and probably that citizen has not had any contact with our village justice system.
Right.
But I think that it is something that prosecutors and our village justice takes very seriously. They're not going to give somebody a $2,000 fine if the first time they hear it, unless it's something egregious. And I think that this kind of brings it to your concern. It brings it more into the real world, that people don't say, you know what, this is the cost of doing business. I'll pay a $100 fine every day of the week, as opposed to knowing that if you do that multiple times, you're going to get a much larger fine. And I also want to add in, and I'm sorry that I didn't mention this, but I do want to say that we also add in a couple other elements to allow the prosecutor and the village justice to come up with additional creative deterrence and punishments. For instance, they can provide for alternative relief in that it does not prevent the revocation or suspension of any license or permit or franchise. So just paying the penalty doesn't necessarily preclude the loss of a license or a permit. So that's also important. That was not in the code before. And also allows the ability to this board to declare a violation that before it was only monetary. It now specifically says that when there are violations that are continuous with respect to time, they can be considered a public nuisance and may be abated by injunctive or other equitable means. You know, we can apply to a higher court, an equitable court, a Supreme Court, to abate that nuisance on behalf of the citizens if there is that kind of continuing problem. And it also makes clear that the imposition of a fine does not preclude equitable relief. So that's also an important addition. And one other addition, just not to sound like we're trying to be ogres and penalize people, but it also provides for, and which you have to provide explicitly, for community service sentencing, which was not an opportunity that we had before in this village. And now we added explicitly that the Justice Court is hereby authorized, as in its discretion it deems reasonable, to substitute performance of community service for public or not-for-profit corporations in lieu of monetary restitution, fines, and or jail time upon agreement and acceptance by the defendant. So I think that that's also a merciful addition and certainly beneficial if someone has a monetary concern to now have that as the explicit authority of the village justice.
Councillor Egan, in summary, when we had spoken previously, you simply said this was outdated to virtually every other community and needed to be upgraded.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you for bringing it to our attention. Thank you, Trustee Allen.
All right. Thank you, Councillor Egan. I like the community service aspect as well. So with that said, I'd like to make a motion to close and to adopt.
Entertain a motion to close the public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Entertain a motion to adopt local law number 6, adding Article 2 to Chapter 1 of the Village Code and amending penalty provisions throughout the code to establish uniform penalties for offenses and violations of the code. And that further be resolved that local law number 6 is hereby declared a type 2 action under SECRA. Is there a motion?
I
Motion.
make the
Is there a second?
second.
Okay. Trustee Yastrzemski. Trustee Allen.
Aye.
Mayor Warren.
Aye.
Trustee Parrish. And Trustee Polaro. Local law is adopted.
Thank you, Russell. Regarding communications to the board, are these available to the public, or is this something that we should quickly run through now?
Just for purposes of I'll just say what they are, and they will be up on our website. The first is was a bid. We had a bid opening for hydrogen peroxide Lake Agawam. There was only one bid received, but it was late. There's a resolution to reject the bid and go out to bid again. Southampton Youth Center is requesting a banner for to be put on the railroad trestle. I do have a resolution ready to be added at the end of the agenda if the board is inclined to do so. It's something we generally do. There is a letter from multiple residents on Somerset Avenue requesting for assistance and recommendations on neighborhood traffic issues, which I will, again, review with Gary and Paul and maybe make some recommendations back to the board. And the last is communications from the USA Women's Half Marathon stating that they're going to cancel the October 5th, 2020 half marathon and look forward to potentially working with us next spring.
Thank you, Russell. With that said, I would like to ask the board if we can take a 2-minute recess and then resume suggested resolutions. Maybe we'll call it 3 or 4. I just quickly want to take a quick break, but if that's okay with everybody.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. My apologies.
Did you mute yourself? Did you mute yourself?
Yeah, I'm making myself.
Oh no, I meant did you mute? Did you mute? I wasn't sure if you did.
Rush.
Just waiting on Brian.
Okay.
Back.
All right, Brian is back. Thank you, everybody. We now have suggested resolutions. Russell, you can, of course, kick it off with number one.
Entertain a motion resolved that claims for the warrant dated August 13th, 2020, totaling $11,444.01, warrant number 7 of the general fund, fiscal year 1920, $1,038,770.28, warrant number 6, the general fund, $180,297.72, warrant number 3 of the capital reserve, and the village payrolls for the period from July 17th, 2020 to August 13th, 2020 be audited and approved.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any questions?
Quick discussion, Russell. Is this a little higher than usual? Warrant number 6.
It is because of the pandemic, our workers' comp carrier did not bill us for the first quarter, so we're actually paying 2 quarters of a workers' comp bill. So that's part of the reason why it's so high. So the largest aspects of it are our health insurance, our workers' comp insurance, dental and vision. And one other item in here that people may want to know, there's a bill for an Aeroclave for $15,000, and that is actually the sanitizer that the board agreed to buy. That so we do not have to pay $6,000 of cleaning. It's actually a sanitizer that we can use in our ambulances and in our offices and things of that nature. So it took a little while to get here, but it did get here.
Is that a COVID reimbursement by chance?
It probably won't be, because it's something that can be used after the pandemic is over. So I mean, we'll put it in, we'll try, but I can't say that that's a guaranteed. What I do know is it will save us a considerable amount of money, because it is quite expensive to have it done by others. If there's no other questions, all in favor? I'm sorry.
Russell, sorry, a couple quick questions. Great news on the Aeroclave. Does this set us back a bit in where we are in our budgets, or are we just, we were ahead earlier on, given the higher than usual total here for this warrant?
No, actually, we're started the year under budget, and we're in comparison year over year. There are a number of purchase orders. Gary, close your ears. That basically, I'm waiting for a little more direction and waiting to see where our first quarter revenues come in. But year over year, we're actually under where we were last year.
Great news. Okay, and then Sprague, I saw here. Just wanted to Sprague operating.
That's fuel.
Okay. And fuel, just curious, fuel for
our fleet. For our fleet.
Okay.
Yep.
Is that typical?
Yes.
And Vaso systems for $8,209.
Which one is,
Awesome.
Appreciate it. Thank you for being diligent here.
no problem.
You can look it up.
No, I have it right here. Oh, that's a,
Garbage truck?
yep, yeah, right, the eject panel on the garbage truck. Thank you, Gary. Yes.
Excellent. That's all I have.
Russell, when you say the first quarter, you mean the first quarter of our fiscal year, or fiscal budget
Yep,
year?
year
and
to,
not-
right.
Okay.
Quarter to date, correct. So
And
that
just so our public is aware of what that is, that start date for our quarter is actually June 1st,
June 1, right,
June 1. So we're actually only 2 months into our
correct.
budgeted year.
But again, most of the monthly bills are front loaded. So I would say that if you notice on the 25th that the warrant will be significantly lower. No other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Entertain a motion resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby brings forward the tabled resolution number 3 of July 21st, 2020, and approves the attached schedule of budget transfers to eliminate line item overages for the period of July 9th, 2020 through August 13th, 2020 for the fiscal year ending May 31st, 2020.
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, again, these are year-end adjustments that are made every year, and it's essentially to clear out our accounts and prepare ourselves for our audit that starts soon. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Russell, just before we get to number 3 here, I just wanted to actually make a motion to withdraw this. I think that we could have a little bit more internal discussion. Trustee Polaro and I had a great conversation on this, and my hope is to get this approved in some form or another, but would like to give the board a little more time to digest this. So I just wanted to make that motion to withdraw the resolution number 3.
Since you are the sponsor of the resolution, that withdrawing it is satisfactory.
Okay. Thank you.
Entertain a motion resolved that the Board of Trustees approves the purchase of a Benpack Model PC 18B 18,000 LP column lift for Central Garage at a cost of $43,250, subject to permissive referendum.
I want you to say that again.
One-time offer.
So moved.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
A quick discussion here. Is this coming out of operating budget, I believe, or is this a capital budget, as in resolution 5?
It would be out of the capital budget.
My only, an issue for me is we haven't adopted a capital budget yet. And, I spoke to Gary a little about this, and some of the concerns that I have about making capital purchases right now is that we don't have a capital budget. And so it's kind of a first come, first served basis. And so, of course, we need a lot. This village always needs more capital purchases. But I do have some concerns about, making investments in capital projects, whether it be Resolution 4 for this or Resolution 5 for Morton's Builders, for example, without having adopted a capital budget. And so I think that our board really should get together and adopt one. This way we can prioritize projects. It's just really not fair for one department or one area to get appropriated funds, and then other areas do not, just simply because it appears on our agenda. So loaded discussion on that. I don't really know if the board has any thoughts, but that's my concern.
Mayor, are you concerned about the purchase for the column lift? Do you know what it's all about? Because there's really more of a safety issue based on the fact that our equipment now that we are buying is 6-axle rather than 4. With the new equipment they're getting heavier because we have more services that we're providing. And honestly, right now that the central garage, and the central garage is not my department, but I did learn about this, is that they're using a 4-column system, then using some basically jacks that they put under there in hopes that if it does fall, it will cover that. And then you have employees sitting underneath those. Rich might be able to tell me how much
Right.
tons these.
Actually, no. Trustee Parish, you did very well with that. Yes, I am aware of the item, and I did discuss with Gary, but I'm aware of it through the years because I remember we put the current list system we have in there. Yes, as you said, it currently is a four-post system, and at the end of the day, and Mayor, a great point about whether funds are kind of indiscriminately going out. But I do think from time to time things come up based solely on safety issues, and of course I think Gary can elaborate. But as Trustee Parrish said, we currently are putting heavier apparatus on on the less capable lift, and then they actually rig other stands, joists underneath it to protect themselves. So this would now bring in a stronger lifting system, capable of handling the weight load of a lot of the apparatus, fire apparatus, and our dump trucks and our DPW apparatus, without having to jerry rig some extra safety system for the so this should not collapse on our mechanics. And then, of course, it would still enable us to use the existing system for our less heavy vehicles. Is that correct, Superintendent Gary Gillespie, or you have anything to add on that?
No, you're correct there, Rich. The idea here is that now that our heavier trucks are dual axles, we've grown from 1 truck to about 7 between the DPW and the fire department. Rather than having to put one of these very heavy trucks up on the lift maybe once a year, now it's becoming a weekly occurrence. So sort of what you said, rather than putting it up on 4 lifts with too much weight and then having our employees go under and add 2 extra jack stands to stabilize, this is what would be required to lift a truck of this weight and size. As some of these trucks are around 80,000 pounds. And if they went up there out of level or something, it could be an accident waiting to happen. So this is pretty much public safety, or we could start sending trucks out, which in the long run would cost us more money than to purchase these jacks.
Because since we have now that we have a robust central garage, we actually able to do more in-house, correct? And this would handle that. Also, what about the cost of it, the bidding level up, explain that.
Well, this is off a Sourcewell contract, so this is it's a nationwide government contract, so there is no bidding process involved. And looking around, if you want to retail these things, they're generally $10,000 to $20,000 more. Kenny Zay actually found this contract himself, and it was pretty good savings, and he went through it and saved a couple $1,000s more off the price tag.
Just for full disclosure, he did submit other quotes that he was able to get, and Sourcewell is a bidding process. So what happens is that Sourcewell does the bidding for us. So it's not so to correctly say it is that we're obligated to purchase from a bid. So we have options of bidding ourselves, or piggybacking another jurisdiction, or participating in a nationwide pool like this is.
Right. This is part of their pre-approved bidding process that we've been doing for years.
Mr. Mayor and board, if I may say something. First of all, I'm a commissioner of only one department, the central garage, as of last year's organizational meeting. And I spent time with our employees in central garage, and I watched them jerry rig these posts to accommodate these new chassis.
Can I make a recommendation?
Yes.
Employee safety issues. It's foremost. It's important. It's critical. This is an employee safety question. I think we should just move off the public comment with regard to public safety concerns and recognize that safety is job one in the village, as in all things that we perform.
And in the document that we received, that was mentioned. And so I think Trustee Ostremski just mentioned it, and I'm simply seconding his commentary with regards to that. But also with regards to the budget, each of our department heads listed out their priority projects, and this was, I believe, number 2 on the list, was it not? Or number 1 for central garage?
We did purchase a lawnmower earlier on in the year, but this is the first major purchase.
Okay, so this may have been number 2, but I know it was in the top 1 or 2, so.
Mr. Mayor, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Trustee Allen, is this a set of 4, 6, or 8? Do you know?
It was 4 and they need 6. I have to get my file out.
Or Gary, do you know?
Yes, it's a set of 6, and they are 18,000 pound each for a max of 108,000. And I did look on eBay yesterday.
You read that's what I'm doing right now.
All right, that is prepared.
That's what I'm looking. This is the beauty. I'm going to miss these Zoom meetings, actually.
If you do see it on eBay, you'll notice that it's probably about $10,000 more for the same unit for the Ben pack.
All right.
You made me scratch my head on that lawnmower, so.
That's right. That's right. I'm going to buy this on eBay. But all right. The only thing I'd like to say to the board is I would love really to get our capital budget done. You know, you feel bad not approving this, but at the same time, it's really time we did our capital budget. No one did anything wrong, but I think it's time that we adopted a capital budget. This way, it's just not a, like I said, a first come first served basis. Is a lot of projects, and we really should, as a board, work together to prioritize them. So I think we can move through with this resolution. I just, of course, want to reiterate that, and maybe in the future, as a best practice, you know, we can hopefully postpone some of these capital purchases until we have our capital budget done.
Hear you there, Mayor. I agree with you. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
So we have a motion and a second. Trustee Yastrzemski.
Aye.
Trustee Allen.
Aye.
Mayor Warren.
Aye.
Trustee Parrish.
Aye.
Trustee Polaro.
Aye.
Entertain a motion to resolve that the Board of Trustees approves the following change orders for the ambulance capital project. Hirsch & Company, $8,557.20. Rollins Electric, $12,288. Morton's Builders, $34,735.
Moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Russell, again, I'll make it quick. Morton's Builders, $34,735.
Can you just explain a little bit on that for everybody, please, Russell?
Sure. So a major part of what this additional costs are the additional expenditures that needed to be done when it was determined that the donated kitchen hood was unable to be installed into the building, and the engineering and the design and the build out was originally for a donated hood. When it was determined that hood would not work, it led to, you know, different cuts through the walls and different cuts through ceilings, and you know, and that's, you know, a number where some of them are. As is always the case in any $6 million project, when you get down to the finish line, you know, there are some things that jointly the client and the construction design team, again, there's probably 1,000 different items, and so there are certain things that that just weren't, there were things that both the village and the design team didn't think of. Like in the bathroom, it's mandated that you have to have diaper changing stations. It's some small things that come up that are relatively expensive because you're paying fair labor standards, wages, and prevailing wage, and it's a public works job, and public works prices. So those are some of the things that that again, when you look at an overall $6 million project, that percentage wise, this is relatively small. Usually, a lot of times it's quite a bit bigger. The initial ask by Morton's Builders for things that they felt that they needed to add on was significantly higher. It was about 3 times higher. Again, we have a great construction management team in SCC, and they worked this down to what they felt was fair and the place that it needed to be, and that's where we are. So again, these are items. Some of the items, to be fair, also are things that were mandated upon inspection by our fire marshal. Remove and replacing certain exit signs. Things that once the building is up and you're actually physically walking through it, some of the mandates, state mandates, that you think are this would work, but once it's built and you do the walkthrough, there's you need additional electric lights here because we didn't realize that this corner of the building is darker than we thought it was, so you need a little more emergency lighting. It's those types of things that come up at the end of a project.
Thank you for clarifying that, Russell. Because again, that's spot on. Some things just come up unforeseen. If I would like to just add as well that the the whole budgeting and design of that facility did as far as the numbers you were just talking about, Russell, actually is what it all went to. And part of the plan was to have the interior of the building, meaning the furniture and so forth and so on, the amenities be donated. And I can say that they had a very robust and successful fundraising program throughout this, and then they had some very generous donors towards the end that did chip in. And so I just want to add that the facility is been a facility that's been long overdue for this department. It's come to fruition, and everybody that's within it is extremely happy and extremely appreciative of the efforts of this board in the village to facilitate. But I do want to point out that the bonding and all the stuff we did was for the structure, and everything that is within that building, which is very nice stuff, was donated by our residents, which is a very awesome thing.
Russell, are there any more capital expenses related to this project? Because it seems like, and again, we all support the ambulance bar. We're very happy that it's there. It's looking really good right now. But are there any more expenses? Because it seems like there's consistently more capital expenses, and now we've got another 50,000 plus. And what else is coming down the pipeline, if anything? Will this be the final expense?
There certainly will probably, I would say that until you walk, everyone walks off the project, that there's always a chance that there could be, some, additional funding needed. Right now we are, as a matter of fact, it was a topic today. There's an issue with one of the exhausts in the building, and this is a situation in which our construction team believes that this is an engineering issue and not necessarily a change order. So once we figure out whether or not the design is right or not, whatever corrective action has to be made, there's an opportunity where, and again, I don't want to get into it too much, because when you start talking about saying that something has to be done because of someone else's lack of work, it's probably best to stay broad about it until it happens. But, I will say that there is another issue that is being worked on that at this time I can't say for certain the village will have some responsibility or not on. But again, until every door is open, closed one time, and you walk through every single part of the building, I can't say for certain that there won't be more. I cannot see where there'd be anything this significant. But again, I know that on a $6 million project, what we just changed here was like less than 1% of the project, and when you're coming down to the finish line, that's not too bad to be off on projecting. When we had some issues with unknown issues with regards to the topography there. There needed to be some changes based upon the fact that the topography and the water table was at a different level than it was initially measured when they first did this. It goes to show you that how quickly those things are happening environmentally. So again, no one can say that this is the absolute end, but I certainly don't see anything major.
Russell, how big is the snag list, or Trustee Strumsky, how big is the snag list that we're still working off of with the builders?
I'm sorry, Russ, you mind if I
Yeah,
you on that?
yeah, I don't have the one that for this week, but I can tell you we're down to about maybe 5-6 items at the most.
So we're very close, because I mean, the old adage, building a house usually takes twice as long and a couple times as much. So we're really down to the very end of it, and hopefully we'll start to see the slowing of bills coming in from that then, right?
Well, you're going to see the final bills because we have we have all the retainage.
Yep.
So there's more bills to come, but again,
But
these
that's
are
all set aside.
well, that is all part of what was the approved capital budget. Yes.
Perfect. Encumbered budget with the bonds. Yep.
So this additional amount is within the encumbered column of our capital reserve reconciliation, Russell, that you and Trustee Polaro and I went through painstakingly for 3 hours 3 months ago.
No, this is outside of it, and that's why we're asking for the change order to do so. And as we discussed both publicly and in that meeting, the village is still going to have to transfer the funds to pay for the amount of money that was expended prior to the actual groundbreaking. There was $500,000 worth of work that was done that again prior to us starting again. If there are no more questions, all in favor?
That's it, Russ. My only request is that we can put this through, but I really think we have to have our, one of the chiefs, come down. I really want to limit the spending, especially as we're in COVID era, but and we don't have a capital budget. So I just want to reiterate, let's get our capital budget done, and I'm hoping this will be the last, big over $50,000 type of capital purchase without having our capital budget adopted. Again, sorry for the repetition, but just want to reiterate my my kind of thoughts and intentions there.
I understand, Mayor. Points taken.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question. As the budget officer, though, in the budget that was proposed, there were capital requests in those. So were those not reviewed?
That's a completely different budget. We adopted the operating budget, and then the capital budget doesn't have a timeline. As Russell can correct me if I'm wrong, but the operating budget had a timeline as per the New York State Controller's Office. Capital budget is up to us.
But the capital budget has reconciliations that we plan for with regards to our outlays. So we have regulatory and compliance issues. We have, committed items. We have aspirational items such as, our harmful algae bloom plan and all that. So those are all related. So I guess I'm just saying, I agree that we have to have a prioritization. Is that what you're saying? Because we're all aware that we have a number of commitments with regards to our capital projects because each of the department heads put those forward.
That's right. I'll let Russell answer that question. But the reason why I would really love to see this capital budget be adopted is because we all do have differences of opinion. So, for example, you said the harmful algae bloom projects. To me, those are not aspirational projects. Those are needed projects. Those are necessities.
Excuse me, I didn't say aspirational. I'm saying aspirational and other objectives because we approved the harmful algae bloom project on early July, if I'm not mistaken. I don't have the exact date.
I mean, one of my top priorities, would be to bring in the algae skimmer, and that's going to be a big heavy lift. I mean, we can get private sector participation, but that's a $5 million project, and we can get $2.5 million from the private sector. But we've got to determine, is that a priority? Is that something we want to carve out and do? That for me would immediately clean Lake Agawam in the short term. Again, we don't want to get sidetracked here. I'm just kind of prioritizing and highlighting the importance of this capital budget. And so, moving forward, I'd love to go do it. I'm happy to work with everybody. It will take some work. We've got our requests from department heads, but that's all you've got for me tonight. I apologize. I've definitely been a bit verbose this evening. I'll let Russell take it from here with the explanation, and that's all you'll be hearing from me on this topic.
So there is no obligation for a village to adopt a capital budget, although it is recommended to do so. When we were rated by bond agencies, what made them comfortable was that we had that we set aside so much funding. We probably set aside more funding than any village on the East End for the purposes of capital projects. So that's kind of the offset, but it is recommended. There is no time schedule. It is common to adopt both at the same time, but not mandatory. So it is a good recommended best practice to do so.
Mr. Mayor, I agree with you. I think we have potentially an operational wish list from our departments, but each of us in our pursuit of our constituents-based responses and feedback to us may have individual projects, or we as a board may have collective projects. I think many of those have come forward in discussions, but yes, I understand your point.
Okay, so with no further questions, I'm going to do a roll call just for safety purposes. Trustee Yastrzemski.
Aye.
Trustee Allen.
Aye.
Mayor Warren.
Aye.
Trustee Parrish. Trustee Polero.
Aye.
Okay. Entertain a motion whereas resolution number 18 of July 21st, 2020 authorized the village to publish and post for a bid to purchase and treat Lake Agawam with hydrogen peroxide, and where no timely bids were submitted, now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Trustees rejects the bids due July 29th and authorizes the village administrator to publish and post a notice to bidders for hydrogen peroxide to be delivered on or before September 3rd, 2020, on or before 2:00 p.m.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Just was there any way to speed this up? Sorry, I said I was done for the night, but
Well,
can we?
Yep.
I mean, September 3rd is soon enough, but is there a way to
Technically,
make this sooner?
Technically, there's not, but I think Gary can speak to the fact that the timing of this, happening, given what is happening on the lake right now, would be sometime. The first application would be sometime after Labor Day, anyway. So, but Gary, you want to just add, give a little more clarity to that?
Yes, and speaking with the DEC, we have this program, and we also have the pilot program of the Sonic LG that's happening. And we also have a DEC application going in. So the application has not been approved, so we cannot do the peroxide yet. That application probably would take at least 2 or 3 more weeks as it's come back to us and we're replying again. And also, if the Sonic LG units are put in, there's probably going to be a time delay before we're allowed to do the peroxide application because they want to see how those units work first. So there most likely will be a delay before we could do an application if awarded.
And if for some reason we can move quicker, we could have a special board meeting, immediately following the opening of the bid and award the bid and go right away. So,
Thank you, Russell.
okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, resolved, the Board of Trustees hereby declares the Village of Southampton's commitment to carry out the following projects, subject to funding approval by the Town of Southampton Community Preservation Fund, and approves submission of requests for funding to CPF for the following projects: Old Town Pond Green Infrastructure, Permeable Reactive Barrier Phase 2 Feasibility Study, Village-wide Watershed Management Plan.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Entertained a motion, resolved, the Board of Trustees accepts the resignation of Brittany Zigrosser, Public Safety Dispatcher 1 from the Police Department, effective August 8th, 2020.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Entertained a motion, Mayor Warren makes a motion, be it resolved that the Board of Trustees promotes the following beach attendants to the title of lifeguard at Cooper's Beach, effective August 17th, 2020.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Entertained a motion, resolved that the Board of Trustees authorizes the village administrator to publish and post a public hearing on September 10th, 2020 for a local law to add section 116.13.1 to Article 3 of the Village Code to regulate outdoor lighting.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Entertained a motion, resolved, the Board of Trustees hereby authorizes a payment to the Southampton Cultural Center Southampton Fest account for website and social media upgrades and maintenance in the amount of $10,000 from the Trustees Special Projects account.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Entertained a motion, resolved, the Board of Trustees accepts the declination of Joseph Prokop and hires Robert Garfinkel to represent the village at the village general election on Tuesday, September 15, 2020, from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. at the Levitas Center, Pound Lane, Southampton, at a rate of $200 per hour.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Going to add the resolution, resolved, the Board of Trustees approves the request of the Southampton Youth Services to hang a banner on Railroad Trestle on North Sea Road from August 21st through September 4th, and require that they provide a policy naming the village as an additionally insured.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye. Okay, to conclude this evening, we have comments from our board members, and per usual, Trustee Yastrzemski, your deputy mayor, can kick this off.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I believe I said a lot tonight, so I'm not going to belabor anything. So you guys, see, I guess it went quicker without me around. Well, sorry. But that said, I did just want to put a shout out this past weekend. We alluded to it earlier that the President of the United States did visit the village and the town of Southampton and used the village of Southampton, our school, high school, as the center point landing area. So, I appreciate everybody's patience and citizens' patience and so forth in dealing with that. And I want to again thank all our first responders, because our fire department was there on standby at the landing site. Our EMS was there at the site, at the landing site. And of course, our police department worked hand in hand with state police and other agencies and the federal agencies and Secret Service to ensure a safe passage and for the president, irrespective of what you think about him, he's still the commander in chief, and we're obligated to provide that, and more importantly, provide safety for our residents and our citizens. So, again, our departments, and certainly all have over time have a long history of coordinating with state agencies and federal agencies. The fact that our police departments, Southern Village PD headquarters was the command center. And as Chief Cummings said, that was the most uniforms he's ever seen in that building. It was quite a show. So again, impressive done, and again, with no harm, no foul to anyone, which is a good thing. So shout out to all our first responders.
Thank you, Rich. Thanks for keeping it brief. We've got Paul's coming pretty soon. They're about to be ringing at the door. We got local.
Oh, also, I'm sorry. One last thing. I'm sorry, Mayor. I'm sorry. And I do want to commend our board for the Southampton in the streets. Because we did kind of, in a sense, have an audit from the state, and that looked both. And we had an agency that came and looked at our beach process, and it only lamented how far ahead of the game we've been. It was mentioned earlier by other trustees that the visitors that came from the state to see our operation were impressed, and we were doing it right. It's always a nice affirmation. We got a clean bill of health. I understand on that, and of course we got an audit for a beach operation because of the COVID, and got a clean bill of health there. So that was 2 good win columns for the village of Southampton last week. So again, but that's with the operation. Again, this board and its employees. So sorry. Now I'm done.
Deputy Mayor Yastrzemski, thank you very much. And next is Trustee Allen.
Yes, we did have good news. We spent several hours with the Chief of Staff for Long Island for Governor Cuomo, the Head of Intergovernmental Affairs for the state of New York, the Deputy Commissioner of the Department of Health, the Commissioner for the State Liquor Authority, and their Deputy Commissioner, along with several other individuals representing and supporting the Cuomo staff. And they did walk around the village prior to meeting with us. They did give us a very pleasant thumbs up with regards to mask wearing. They recognized how hands-on this board is with any and all issues regarding the adherence to COVID. And Chief Cummings, members of this board, along with our staff, Gary Gillespie and our building inspector and our fire marshal, participated in that. So I thank everybody for having done that. On that note, we are continuing Southampton in the streets this Saturday through Labor Day with a rain date on Sunday. And we wanted everybody to know that because our merchants wanted to have sufficient time to plan and allocate staff. So now you know, we will let you know by 3-ish in the afternoon if the weather is inclement and it needs to shift to Sunday. I think there's been a lot of confidence in our village. We have about a dozen plus new stores, and will give everyone a great opportunity to come, stroll safely, and wine and dine, because you have to drink and eat together now under the new governor's orders, as well as eat ice cream that you can still do without a mask, and look at all of our great new stores. I also wanted to mention that our youth committee will be manning locations for chalk art on Main Street. If you have any questions, you'll see our new youth committee ambassadors wearing their very nice t-shirts. Thank you very much, Administrator Cradaville, for having put that together for us. And then the Children's School and the Southampton Youth Committee wanted me to mention a shout out for their outdoor movie this coming, this August 19th. What day would that be? That would be next Wednesday at Downs Park. They will be showing Despicable Me, and we will hopefully post the reservation link on our website tomorrow. And I thank the Children's School for sponsoring this. And I'd also, as an end, like to wish a very happy birthday to Dr. Charles Manger, who's celebrating his 100th birthday today. Dr. Manger is a longstanding summer resident, he and his family, and they've contributed a great deal to the community as well as to the medical profession. So that's all I have.
Congratulations on that, 100. Very good.
Pretty good. All right. Thank you, Trustee Allen. Next is Trustee Parrish.
Take it off mute. Take it off mute.
You're on mute.
Okay. Yes, happy birthday, Dr. Manger. You're an incredible man at 100, and you've raised a great family out here. We appreciate all the time you spent out here. So also, I got a little bit of a list. We've had a busy couple weeks in some of the departments that I am, worked with. So highway, tropical storm, coming in last week. spoke to all the department heads prior to it. They were all geared up, getting things ready to go. It hits. Interesting enough, there were over 40 incidents of tree damage, rivaling amounts of past hurricanes. So this did sneak up on us a little bit more than we thought. The wind was a lot stronger than what we anticipated. Some of the crews worked up to 12 hours, and didn't go home until all areas of the streets were safely passable. After initial emergency cleanups, the focus turned to aerial hazards and assessing damaged trees for immediate removal. We did see a lot of trees get compromised during this. Parks Department ended up chipping in and getting together with the Highway Department and helping them, do some of the things that they could help them with. So there was a real nice, blend together at this point, which Gary, I appreciate that, and that was really huge to get it done quickly. I'm proud of the way that they worked. It did get things done, cleaned up pretty darn quickly, and so hats off to them. One of the things that we came out of this again is that trees. These trees are vulnerable. A lot of them have gotten beyond their, useful life. Exactly right in front of Golden Pear on Nugent Street, one fell again. A huge branch hit a car. Luckily, there was no pedestrians on the sidewalk. That same tree, Mayor, as you know, this happened in June because you sent me a picture of it. That same tree lost a branch also. So that's twice in the last 2 months. So we will be looking at trees more thoroughly in the fall and probably taking a hard look on, the way to get these trees that are dangerous, to another past their prime and replanting. Parks, we got a new power washer cleaning the streets. As with food on the streets now, with more outdoor dining, they tend to be a little bit more debris. It is pretty darn cool. It is almost, it does gets rid of everything. They've worked really hard preparing for tropical storm coming through too, securing all the green areas, making sure the flags were, taken down. Then during the storm, they were out and about, making sure sidewalks were, taken care of, checking out all the trees and everything around the park area. So again, my hat's off to them. And more importantly, I'm going to stress again, thank you for working with the Highway Department. Doesn't happen very often, from what I understand, but they did. They came together, they brought their chipper out, and they got rid of a lot of debris faster than normal. So good work, guys. Beaches. Again, to Rich's point and Trustee Allen's great inspection from the health department. That was great. Really felt proud for Matt and everybody involved in that beach process down there when they came down and said that it was excellent the way that we had it set up. Great news. Couldn't be happier for our residents, our visitors, and more importantly, the people that are down there doing the work on a daily basis. Lifeguards. They've been working hard over the past 3 weeks. A couple storms coming through, offshore hurricanes, tropical storms. Been making quite a few saves. We haven't talked about them very much this year. And there's a lot to credit with them. That is their job. And they don't want to get a lot of hoopla for it. But I will tell you this. I did get to spend some time with them, and they are doing a fantastic job. And thank you, because that is a very important job in this village, especially this time of year. Beach attendant staff that's coming in, delivering people to their spots. The amount of compliments I got from beachgoers saying how polite they are and how they're doing their job excellent has been great. Parking booth attendants, same thing. Greeting people as they're coming in, trying to get them moving along, not making it very stagnant. There's a couple people in there that are more dedicated than others. Wink, wink, Trustee Ostremski. But, they are the first line of defense. And thank you to CC Highsmith. Another season, I believe this is her 5th. She just went back to college. She did a phenomenal job leading that crew down there. And I appreciate her hard work, and best of luck at your semester this year. Glad you're going back. Finally, something that I didn't mention the last meeting that I forgot, and it was my bad, but I want to make Julie Fitzgerald. I want to thank you for your years as an employee of the village, mayor's assistant. Your dedication. Not only were you the mayor's assistant, but you helped out with SAC. You were part of the Southampton Fest. You helped out appointing boards, minutes for our village board meetings, minutes for all the other committees. Helping with the mask campaign, helping with any sign that's needed on the railroad tracks, walking around and checking things out. You went way beyond your scope. And I appreciated working with you from before I was involved in this public official and through that time we had together. You were phenomenal. And I appreciate it. And I had to let you know, and I miss you. And thank you to everybody for continuing to wear your mask when you're out in the streets, for being, considerate of other people, and have a great night.
Thank you, Trustee Parrish. Trustee Polaro.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have a lot to say as deputy of the beach. I think Mark covered it well. I do thank everyone for all the hard work. It was kind of fun watching the storms through the beach camera, especially one of the beach attendants showing me exactly when the lifeguard stand got tipped over by the wind. So I thank my son for that. The arts, while it is still one of the things that can go on in this village, and it is still going on in this village. So I'm happy about that. Southampton Arts Center is doing a lot. You can check out their website for all of their programming. They have some wonderful things coming up. They've got a great, walking garden around. Southampton Cultural Center also has, as things are going, is starting to do a few things there, and we'll hope to have some one-on-one music lessons starting up in the fall as we can. Same with the Historical Museum. So there are still experiences to be had out there in the village. So the websites have all the programming on there for them. So please check that out if you're ever looking for something to do. Justice Court, nothing to report there. And that is about it. I thank everyone too. Again, I think the greatest thing we can do for ourselves is to wear masks. So please be vigilant when you cannot social distance.
Thank you, Trustee Polaro. I'll conclude with a few quick updates. I know we briefly mentioned Heart of the Hamptons at the beginning of our agenda, and want to make sure we continue to push as hard as possible. Clearly, one of the pillars of our community, and one of the best organizations we've got with great leadership. So wanted to make sure we can continue to make that a reality as they make the transition to the next chapter in their state of being a nonprofit. In addition, Southampton Streets are very excited to have back after a 2-week break. Unfortunately, couldn't have it last weekend, but definitely looking forward to having it again. In addition, we did accept the resignation of a dispatcher this evening. I spoke to Alfie Callahan, and very excited to be able to appoint him as soon as we move through the civil service process. Was hoping to do it tonight, but after speaking with Village Administrator Cratterville, we have to get a new civil service list, so that would explain the holdup there. But if it wasn't for that, he would be a dispatcher already. So wanted to bring that up. A few of the things I wanted to highlight. Very excited to have many new stores, new retailers. Southampton Village is starting to become an art hub. We have a number of new art galleries, both on Main Street, Hampton Road, Job's Lane, and it is very exciting to see our village progress in that direction. A year ago, or we'll call it 14 months ago, right at the start of this summer, we had really a 10-year record of vacancies, and a year later, we actually have some of our lowest vacancies, and we've got some amazing retailers and businesses coming to Southampton Village. That will only get better as we continue to make steps to improve our village, and interest gets drawn. And when we work with our sewer system, that will even make things even better. But it's very exciting to see all of our new storefronts and businesses really call Southampton Village their home. So that's outstanding. Quick highlight regarding the History Museum. Very successful basket sales. Of course, with COVID-19, it was certainly a different and a challenge. But from speaking with Connor Flanagan over at the History Museum, the update this year with basket sales is a big success, completely sold out. So very happy to see that. Regarding this past week or two with power outages, was happy to do the job, to be on the phone with PSEG all the time, putting pressure when we could. And so wanted to thank all parties involved for getting our power back on, and also thank Gary Gillespie and your team, DPW, making sure, as Trustee Paris said, that we were all full steam ahead. We did an amazing job. We probably did one of the best jobs, I would imagine, on Long Island. So wanted to thank you and your team for really doing a phenomenal job. And just a quick mention, Mark agreed with you. I know you mentioned and thanked Julie Fitzgerald. As I told you 9 months ago, I am willing to be compromising, and that door is not shut. Trustee Yastrzemski and I, as you know, wanted to find an alternative position. We are still happy to do so. And so wanted to just reiterate that to you. When you're ready to work with us, we'd be happy to make that a reality. So I know we've got our board meeting next week, or in 2 weeks, I'm sorry. I had a great conversation with Trustee Bellaro, and hoping to have a great conversation with you as well. So with that being said, would like to make a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.